Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week I'm sharing my slides from this year's NADA conference in Las Vegas. Every year, the National Auto Dealers Association puts on its annual convention. And this year, it was back in Vegas. As always, I had an absolute blast seeing everyone, and we had some amazing conversations with dealers at our booth. Best of all, I got to present a session about SEO, where I got to share the results of our massive 2-year study on dealership Google Business Profiles, along with the results of over 1,000 SEO audits of dealership websites. So in today's episode, I'm sharing a recording of the entire presentation, so everyone that didn't make it to Vegas can check out the info. This is Forget the Snake Oil, a data-based approach to SEO. We can skip the legal BS they make me put in at the beginning. Now, I've been talking about local SEO at automotive conferences for over a decade, and there's kind of a lot of legs still left because Google releases over 3,000 updates a year to the algorithm. But even still, the basics have kind of stayed the same. But if that's the case, how come so many auto dealers and most of the automotive SEO vendors are still so darn horrible at SEO? Part of the problem is people forget SEO isn't just optimizing keywords for Google, it's optimizing the website experience for real live people. We know that your customers are going to shop around, so you want to make sure that your website experience is better than the website experience that customers have with the competition. And most dealers can't really handle SEO in-house because they just don't have the setup or the knowledge or the staff to be able to handle it, which means they have to work with vendors. But most of the vendors in automotive don't do SEO correctly because it's just too much effort. And then we have the massive train wreck that's the OEM approved vendor program that really doesn't operate in the dealership's best interest. Those providers have to work with any dealership that wants to sign up. So you end up having the same vendor handling the SEO and digital marketing for direct competition for competitors that are across the street from each other. And it's really hard to update your offerings once you're in these programs. So they're also kind of lazy, and you end up with providers that are offering SEO tactics that are years and years and years out of date. And because it's so hard to update your offering, that means you're effectively locked into offering the exact same cookie cutter strategy to every single dealer that you work with. And you can't really use co-op to decide who to use because the co-op system is designed to get you to use the people that are in the program that aren't really helping you anyway. And you shouldn't choose your provider based on who's the cheapest because with SEO, you're paying for expert butts and seats to sit there and do the work. So if you're spending less money, that means less expertise and less time spent on literally your most important marketing channel. You got to stop spending the money of a beat up Corolla that's 20 years old, but expecting the results that you would get if you'd have bought a fully loaded Mercedes. That cookie cutter strategy just doesn't work in today's world. Every dealership is unique and every location is unique. So you need a customized strategy if you want to win in today's market. And you need to be doing local SEO. Google uses multiple algorithms. And for anything related to dealerships, Google's going to use its local algorithm, so you need to work with someone that understands the intricacies of that completely different algorithm. And we know that this is necessary because if you do any searches related to dealerships, the results are automatically localized, even if you didn't ask for localized results. Like in this search where I just searched for Ford dealer, and all I see are the results of dealerships that are near my current location. If we boil things down to simple concepts, it's easier for you to make the right decisions for your dealership, and it's easier for you to come back from a crazy convention and conference and sort through the important things that you need to adjust. So if we think about Google at the simplest level, it's really just a pattern detection program. So when you're doing SEO, you're trying to give your dealership a more attractive pattern. So in today's presentation, I'm going to change it up and share different information than what I've shared in the past. I'm going to talk about some unique data from a lot of research that we've been doing over the past few years. Because if you know what other dealers are doing and what they're not doing, that helps you be better at SEO yourself. So over the last few years, we've conducted a really big research project on Google Business Profiles for dealerships and actually for a couple of other verticals as well. We've pulled over 2 million data points on over 8,500 Google Business Profiles across the 3 verticals that we're studying. So for automotive, that resulted in 2,734 GBPs. And we found those by searching the following keywords in each of the following cities: Ford dealer, Chevrolet dealer, Toyota dealer, Jeep dealer, Kia dealer, and used car dealer in each of those 14 cities. And then we looked at what's called the local finder. So you're familiar with the map pack where it shows the map and the 3 results, but then you can click more places and it goes beyond just the top 3. We took positions 1 through 20 for each of these searches in each of these cities to then analyze what was showing up and what was working and what wasn't. After we took out all of the department Google Business profiles, we were left with a total of 2,125 unique dealerships. So as I'm talking through this, please understand that some of the things I'm talking about are ranking factors, things that influence your visibility in search results. But some of them don't influence visibility, but they're still important to pay attention to because they're going to influence the rate at which you convert potential customers. So let's start with the ranking side of things. Looking at primary category, that's literally the most weighted element, most important factor in Google's local algorithm is the first category that you choose in your Google Business profile. Now, we searched Ford, Toyota, Chevy, Jeep, Kia, and used car dealer. So those are the only categories that we should see as a primary category. But we saw 32 different primary categories instead of 5 or 6 primary categories. And even worse, 16% of the dealerships, of the 2,100 dealerships, had just the generic car dealer as their primary category, which is absolutely incorrect and is never really going to work. Your primary category carries a lot more weight, so you really have to pay more attention to it and be strategic. There's a video from my weekly video series that you can go watch that will explain how to be strategic with this. But there are more than 1 category slots available. There are actually 10 category slots, and there's more than 10 categories that apply to car dealers. So you should always have all those category slots filled. But almost 24% of the dealerships, almost 1 out of 4 of the dealerships only had a single category selected. And only about half of the dealerships had more than 5 categories selected. In fact, only 15% of the dealerships in the study used all 10 category slots. Really, you should use 10, but maybe sometimes maybe only 9 work, but you should always have at least 9 or 10 categories. There's a video there where I walk through the different categories that you should use for the sales listing, for your service listing, and for your parts listing. And speaking of that, you should have separate departments set up, and only 61% of the dealerships had separate Google Business profiles for the various departments of the dealership. You should definitely have separate ones for parts and service, but you could also add in collision. You're allowed to set those up because those are different business centers, but you are not allowed to set up a separate listing for used cars or a separate listing for your finance department or even a separate listing for a car buying strategy. Now, just because you've done it doesn't mean it's allowed to be done. You want to be really careful because if Google catches you doing something against the rules, you'll get suspended. Now, as you're setting up these different categories and different listings and different profiles, make sure that when you're selecting the categories for each profile, you do not combine them. So all sales categories on your primary profile, all service categories on service, all parts categories on parts. And looking into the reviews. Reviews are incredibly influential in visibility and also for converting customers. Obviously, we saw an average review count of 1,534 reviews per dealership. Now, I'm not telling you you need 1,534 reviews. I'm just letting you know what the average is because Google honestly doesn't care how many reviews you have. Google just cares that you have more reviews than local competitors. But you want to be careful. You don't want to get too many more. If you've got 5,000 reviews, but everybody else in town has 400 reviews, you've blown so far past everyone else that people will assume that you're doing something to cheat. It just looks fake if you're too far beyond everyone else. So be careful with your acquisition pace. The average review score was only a 4.1. So all of you that are freaking out that you don't have a perfect 5.0, don't worry about it. The actual ideal range is 4.4 to 4.7. The average pace for review acquisition was only about 23 new reviews per month. So make sure that you're making it easy for customers to leave a review and make sure you ask every single customer. You've got to be proactive. It's not human nature to leave a review when you're happy. So this video right here walks you through the entire review process and helps you tweak what you're doing so that you'll be more effective with your reputation management efforts. And some new stuff that's come about from research in the last year that I'd really like to share with you. You know, when you first go to a Google business profile and there is a default 4 or 5 reviews that are shown before you change the sort order by looking at the newest reviews or the best reviews or the worst reviews. If a review includes a photograph uploaded with it, then it stays in that default sort for a longer period of time. And if the review has more text included with it, it stays in that default sort for a longer period of time. And you can do a thumbs up on a review saying that it's helpful. If a review has 2 or more of those thumbs up upvotes, it stays in the default sort for a longer period of time. So let's take a little advanced step forward with these ideas. If you've got a bad review that shows in your default sort of those top 10 reviews, that's really bad for you because anyone that comes to your profile is going to see that bad review before they click the filter to look at something else. So you can get it buried really quickly. Talk to a couple of people who recently left you an awesome 5-star review. Ask them to add a little bit more text, a little bit more story to their review, and to upload a photo along with it. Once they've done so, then you just have a couple of your team members go do an upvote or a thumbs up on that review, and boom, that review will jump to the top of the list. And you do this for 3 or 4 reviews, and it bumps that bad review down, and now it's no longer visible. It is a super, super killer tactic. And another thing that we looked at in the study was some of the technology on the website. And shockingly, 18% of the websites were not responsive. And for those of you watching, that's all the people that are on dealer.com, because dealer.com doesn't have responsive websites. Even though Google's been saying for years that you needed it, and even though about a year and a half ago, Google rolled out the page experience update that now actively penalizes you for not having a responsive site, still almost 1 out of 5 dealership websites aren't responsive. And as you optimize a page, it's important to match the intent and answer the question that that potential searcher is asking. So remember, we looked for a Ford dealer, Chevy dealer, Toyota dealer, etc. Only 15% of the dealership sites had this keyword phrase on the site. So you're a Ford dealer, but you don't say Ford dealer anywhere on your site. That's pretty shockingly bad. The most important thing you need to remember when it comes to SEO is that if you want to show up as a search result for a particular phrase when someone types it in, then you need a dedicated page about that singular concept on your website. And that page needs to be the best answer in the local area to the question that the searcher is asking. And this is where most people really mess up on fix stops. You can't have one page that just lists every service. Everything you want to show up for, whether it's oil changes or tire rotations or batteries or wipers, you need a dedicated page on your site about that concept. And you need to make sure that throughout your site, your content is making it clear to everyone why you're stinking awesome and why people should buy from you. Because obviously you're a car dealer. You don't need to be like, hey, we're a dealership and we serve customers in this town. That's obvious. You need to use the content to explain to people why they should buy from you and not from the competition. Because if you've got the same generic BS cookie cutter content on your site as everyone else, why is anybody going to care? Why is anybody going to choose to buy from you instead of from one of your competitors? So once you've written all of this awesome content, you then have to go optimize the content so it's easy for Google to understand exactly what the content is about, and it's easy for customers to understand what the content is about. So I'm going to walk through how to optimize a page. This is either going to help you have a better understanding of what you need to do when you're looking at your own content, or it's going to help you at least understand enough to hold your vendors accountable and make sure that your SEO partner is optimizing things correctly. So when you're optimizing pages on your site, you need to remember it's about a singular keyword in a singular location. So you need the same targeted keyword phrase and the same city in each of the page elements. So the first most important element is the title tag. It's what shows in the little tab above where you type in the URL, and it's what populates those blue links when you show up as a search result in Google searches. So it's really important to have your targeted keyword phrase and your city in the title tag. Do not ever put your dealership name first. You're the only dealership name that. You will always rank number 1 if someone searches for that phrase. And a lot of people will say, oh, I need it there for branding. But no, you don't, because now Google shows the little icon for your dealership and the name of your dealership above your blue link when you show as a search result. So you don't even need it for branding. So keyword and city in your title tag. The second most important element is your H1 heading. That's the big thick headline above the text area of the page. Should have the same keyword phrase, same city, and it should be a bit more conversational. You should only have one H1 heading on the page as well. So check your providers, make sure, because some of those providers put 4 or 5 on the page, and that's really not good. Obviously, you should have the keyword and the city in your page content, but if you've written the best answer in the local area to the question that's being asked that also answers subsequent questions that's all about you and why people should buy from you, you're probably not going to have to do much optimization here. It's already going to be there. You should also have the keyword and city in the alt text on your images. Now, if you'd have seen me speak at an automotive conference 10 years ago, I would have told you that Google can't tell what's in the image. So alt text is part of that image embed code that describes what's in the image. But now machine learning platforms allow Google to know exactly what's in your image. But alt text is still part of the algorithm, and it's something that most people don't do anything with, so it gives you a little bit of an edge. Plus, it's an ADA compliance issue. If you don't have alt text on your images, you can actually get sued by a visually impaired person for not having that on your site. So let's avoid the lawsuits and make sure it's there. This is also another problem with dealer.com sites because their platform doesn't allow you to put alt text on uploaded images. You should also have the keyword and city in the URL for those interior pages on your site. It's a better signal for Google and it looks better for humans. And finally, you need it in the meta description. Now, the meta description doesn't have any influence on how you show up in searches. It doesn't affect ranking, but since the meta description is what populates those couple of gray sentences underneath your blue link when you show up as a search result in Google, you want to make sure you write something compelling. So treat this like you're writing a compelling ad and make sure that that content is there too. We were also able to look at some of the other things on the website, like how many words were on the landing page, which landing page is whichever page your Google Business Profile points to, which for dealerships is the homepage. So the average number of words on the homepage, not counting stop words like of and an and the and a, was 832 words, which is pretty shocking considering most of the automotive SEO vendors out there only give you maybe 400 or 500 words. So that just shows that those guys that are just writing a little bit of content aren't really matching up to even what's out there just in general. And specifically, that stuff's not going to work for Google. Now, that doesn't mean that 832 is the magic number for word count. But again, you're trying to write the best answer in the local area to the question that's being asked and explain why you're the best option. You can't do that in 300 or 400 words. We looked at the number of links pointed at the websites as well, because having another website linked to your site is incredibly important. And the average number of links pointed at a dealership website was 18,754. But that was only from an average of 208 websites, because you can get multiple links from the same site. And there's diminishing return in that. Once you get a link from a website, getting another link from the same site doesn't really do that much for you, and really doesn't do that much if you get a whole lot of links from the same site. So when you're evaluating your link profile, whether you're doing your SEO yourself or you're looking at the work that your vendor partner is doing for you, don't worry about the total number of links. What's really important is how many unique websites or unique URLs are linking to you. And because we're targeting Google's local algorithm, you need to make sure you're paying attention to getting links from local websites and local businesses. Those national sites or those random e-commerce sites don't matter. You want to get those local links. And if you get involved in the local community, it's super easy to get those local links. If you need ideas for how to do it, I've got a really killer video from my series that walks you through some concepts that you can use either directly yourself or use them as a springboard and figure out your own stuff. And as we're talking about the difference between the total number of links from the total number of unique websites, the biggest gap that we found was over 3 million. I'm not going to mention the name, but it's a very large auto dealer group that I'm 99% sure has their own internal SEO team. And most of their sites have 3.5 to 3.8 million links pointed at them. But the biggest difference we saw was one specific site that had 3,775,629 of a gap, because there were 3,776,260 links, but that was only from 631 websites. So let's finish up real quick and talk about some of the conversion factors that we found in this study. Vehicles for sale previously called cars for sale. Super important. It lets people browse live inventory on your Google Business Profile without going to your website. 20% of the dealers didn't have that. And in today's world, it's been out for a couple of years. Why do you not have that? Like, your competitors all have it. You should have it too. And everyone's been talking for years about using UTM tracking on your links so that things are correctly attributed in Google Analytics. Google Analytics will only report traffic that it gets referral data for. And a lot of the traffic on mobile, referral data is not passed to Google Analytics for privacy concerns. So if you drop a UTM tracking link onto your website link in your Google Business Profile, it will now correctly attribute that traffic as organic traffic, where previously a lot of it probably gets reported as direct, which is Google Analytics kind of shrugging it off, saying, we don't know where this traffic came from. So here's a video that walks you through how to add the UTM tracking to your website links in your Google Business Profile correctly. And also, yeah, there's a legal disclaimer on this slide because the NADA legal team didn't really understand what this was, and they thought we were talking about tracking individual customers with PII information. That's not what this is, so you can ignore that legal disclaimer. Don't let it scare you off. This is definitely something you should be doing. We also checked out the questions and answers widget that appears in your Google Business Profile, and we saw an average of 9 questions per dealership. And this widget allows anybody to ask you a question, and any random person can answer that question for you. Customers actually think it's chat. They think it's instant messaging. They think someone is on the other end waiting to answer the questions that they're asking. But it's really a community discussion widget. So questions can receive multiple answers because it's more for community discussion. But it's a problem because customers are expecting it to be chat. The really cool thing is that you can ask your own questions of yourself, load your own questions, set up a pre-site FAQ page, because nobody's going to go to an FAQ page on your website to read through the 30 or 40 questions to see if their question is there and maybe answered. And nobody's even going to do it here. But it's really cool the way that Google built this widget. If a question is similar to what this customer is asking, if a question has been asked and answered in the past, as the person is typing the question in, Google will not only autocomplete the question, they will pop up an answer to the question. So it's even faster than the response that that potential customer would get from a human being, whether it's through a phone call or a face-to-face conversation or even through chat, because Google is giving them the answer before they're even done asking the question. So you've got to preload questions. It's really, really cool. It's an amazing pre-site experience. And because it's community discussion, questions can receive multiple answers, and you can upvote those answers. So whichever answer has the most upvotes is the answer that's displayed as the primary answer to the question. So you should also be monitoring the Q&A section to be sure that your dealership answers are the primary answers to the questions in every situation. Looking through, only about 20% of the questions had a primary answer from the dealership. So you've got this huge discussion going on, and you're not paying attention to what potential customers and past customers are saying about you. We also looked at Google Posts, and Google Posts are really cool, but a lot of dealers have dropped off and stopped using them. We only saw an average of about 2 posts a month, a little bit over 2 posts a month. I did a Whiteboard Friday episode for Moz, which is a very long-standing, respected digital marketing video series. So this is a 15-minute video that goes crazy in depth on how to do Google Posts the right way. So definitely go watch that video. It will help. And please don't treat them like social media. This is the biggest mistake that we see with dealerships, is treating posts like social media. They are literally ads. Treat them as such. They are free ads that appear on your Google Business Profile. So write them like ads. Don't share delivery photos with customers standing by their cars. That does not help. This is content that people see before they even get to your website. They have not chosen to follow you on social media. This is not effective. And don't create a post that links to an individual piece of inventory, because those posts stay live for 6 months, and that car's probably sold next week. And now if someone sees that post, they're going to click on something that doesn't exist. It just doesn't work. It's not the right way to use posts. But the key to success is really optimizing the thumbnail, because you put the post in and Google will automatically crop to a smaller version of the image and just show the first few words of text. If that thumbnail isn't compelling, nobody's going to click on it, and it really doesn't matter what's in there. So for better control over the image crop, since it happens automatically, we created a really cool Photoshop template. You can download it at that link right there, and it looks like this. Anything in that white grid is going to be safe, and that will show in the thumbnail, and then the rest of the image will appear once they click the thumbnail and see the full post. The last little bit that I want to talk about is this really cool scoring matrix that we have that I use when I talk at 20 group meetings. Now, I've also used it for hand raisers at conferences. So if someone's like, hey, that sounds cool, can you check it out? Yeah, sure, I'll do your sites too. And anytime we're talking to dealers who might potentially be working with us, we're going to do it as well so that it gives us a little bit more insight into the opportunities of where we could help that dealer. So we collected and analyzed all of the scores. Now, I've got more than 1,000 at this point, but since I had to turn these slides in like 6 months ago at the time, we had about 920 versions of this that we had run since the beginning of 2022. So I got all of these results together, and it's basically a mini SEO audit. It looks at the 4 major areas that influence your visibility in search, which is the content on your site and how it's optimized, the links pointed at your website from other websites, your Google business profile and how that's optimized, and your reviews on Google and Yelp and how you respond to those reviews. Those scores are then weighted to approximate the importance of each of those areas to Google's local algorithm. Now, I do want to point out the matrix scores on basic tactics, not on strategy. People tend to use those terms interchangeably, but there's a really important difference. Strategy is which direction are you going, and tactics are which steps do you take to get there. The reason we're looking at basic tactics is we want it to be more universally helpful, because I'm usually using this at 20 group meetings. And if this was too much on the strategy side, the dealer could take it back to their current SEO partner or to their SEO in-house team, and it'd be very easy to refute those results and say, oh, that's SearchLab's dumb score. It doesn't mean anything. They don't know anything about you. They don't know what your strategy is. We know what we're doing. But when we look at basic tactics that anyone who knows SEO would agree are important, that makes it more universally helpful. You can't argue that that's the incorrect thing to do. And you don't even have to get into strategy, because if you're not using the right basic tactics, it doesn't matter what your strategy is. So all of the scores get added together and you get a score of anything up to 100 points. Although 100 is effectively impossible to score in the real world. Realistically, if you're doing good SEO, you should be at least in the mid 60s and really more in the low 70s to mid 80s. But the average score that we saw across these almost 1,000 audits was only 14.9. So if we're doing high school math, that means they scored a 14.9%. Not great. That's not even an F. And then if we break down the different sections, the on-site section is the most important. It's almost half of the weight. It's worth 44 points. The average score was only 1.2 points out of 44. Again, high school math, that's 2.7% out of 100. Not good. The average score for inbound links was 1.3 out of 10. A little bit easier math there. That's 13%. The average score on Google Business Profiles was 8 out of a possible 32. That's only 25%. And the average score for reviews was 4.4 out of 14. That's a 31%. It's the highest of the group, but also the thing that the vast majority of dealers handle either in-house or through a separate vendor. So their SEO vendors aren't even doing anything for this anyway. And the scores really outline where most dealerships are doing SEO really ineffectively or just flat out wrong, or their vendors are doing it wrong. Because if you look at those percentages, you got 31% for reviews, 25% for Google Business Profile, 13% for links, which most of the time happen naturally. And then the most important, most weighted element, only 2% of the possible score. Really not so great, right? So if you'd like to get your site scored, we'd be happy to check your score out for your site. You can scan this QR code and it's going to ask you for your URL, or if you've got a couple of sites, we're happy to do those. Send them in. I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's just the more data we have, the more helpful information I can share next year when I come back and talk about how we've now looked at 2,000 or 3,000 dealerships instead of just 1,000. So to sum it all up, you've got to customize your SEO strategy. You've got to improve your pattern so that your dealership will show up more often and in better placement in local search results. But remember that SEO is a marathon, it's not a sprint. This isn't like Google Ads where you put money in today and get results tomorrow. You've got to give your SEO time to work. Now, obviously, if you're working with a vendor who is a little shady or not doing things, go ahead and part ways. But you really need to have it in your head that as far as results, it should take 6 to 8 months to even start to see traction, because the things that you're doing today are affecting your visibility 2 to 3 months down the road. And all of this has to have time to work. So 6 to 8 months to start to see traction. And then you really start seeing the big results at 12 to 14 months. So just give it time, stick with it, follow these suggestions and these strategies and tactics, and you'll be able to win. If you've got any questions, definitely reach out and let me know. I am happy to answer anything or even hop on a call with you. That was, forget the steak oil, a data-based approach to SEO. Pretty awesome stuff, right? That's definitely all the time we've got left for this week's episode. So you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.